Now let's take a look at Manchester City's transfer window. They've been busy in January, namely Antoine Semenyo and Mark Gahey coming in as arrivals. And Pep Guardiola was asked if he was happy with the January transfer window for his club, and he was a little bit jokey when he answered.
I'm a little bit sad and upset because in net spent the last 5 years, we are the 7 in the Premier League. So I want to be the first. I don't understand how the club don't spend more money. So I'm a little bit grumpy with them. But with that position like we won in the past, because we spend a lot, with now 6 teams have to win the Premier League. And the Champions League is the FA Cup because they spend more in the last 5 years. This is a fact, you know. It's not, I would say, an opinion, you know. You can say an opinion, for example, like you say, you play good or play bad against the Spurs. So we can be agree or disagree. And but that is facts. So good luck for the 6 teams who are in front of us to spend net in the last 5 years. Let's go.
I mean, he's right, obviously. He had a little bit jokes.
I tell you what.
Here.
He's a great coach, right? But he's not a comedian.
No, he's not. But he does seem...
You were waiting for the punchline?
That was horrible.
He does seem, though, to be pushing back on the narrative that City buys their success, Stevie, saying, you know, these guys should be doing this if they've spent all this money, because that is what used to be said of them. Oh, well, with all the money they've spent.
It's kind of hard to see where he's coming from. You know, this time last year he was talking about he doesn't want any players. Now he's trying to be sarcastic, saying that, you know, they haven't actually spent that much money, so we're actually doing all right.
That joke did not hit with Stevie, did it?
No, I mean, where does he want us to go? What does he want us to think about where they stand? I don't know where he's coming from. I don't know what makes him happy.
Excuse the pun, because I really don't mean it here, but he does seem to have a little bit of a pep in his step right now. It feels as though he feels like the tide is turning for his team when it had been going against them. Yes or no? He feels a bit more punchy in these
I think he's more punchy because he knows that his team is no good.
He's deflecting.
Yes. Let's not talk about the details of why my team gave up a lead in the weekend. Let's not talk about the details of why my team has been underperforming. Let's not talk about the fact that my group that was supposedly had turned a corner had now gone back into the cul-de-sac and are not a team that you can trust to get results every weekend, which is what Manchester City had been in the past, previous to last season. That we always thought, you know what, they're going to go on this run in which it's 15 matches in which they win it all, and that's how they win the league because nobody else can keep up with them. Now that if you're Manchester City, you just want to win game this week, and we'll win another game next week, and that there is a winning streak, and hopefully we can keep that going.
You know, I think it was only a couple of weeks ago we did something. We were talking about him in a similar fashion because he was coming out with this sort of sarcastic nonsense again, and it is pretty clear he's more than happy to talk about this nonsense than he is about his team, because his team isn't great right now, and his team might be sitting second. And they might be apparently the biggest challenge to Arsenal.
Kind of.
But they're not. They're really not. They're not in a good place. And nobody's scared of them anymore. That's
even with these new players coming in.
Nobody's scared of playing against Man City.
You know who he sounds like? And he would love to hear this. He sounds like Mourinho. He is deflecting like Mourinho. The manager with whom he had so many run-ins while one was at Barcelona and the other one was at Real Madrid. He sounds exactly like Jose Mourinho when his teams were not performing at a high level, and then you get a little punchy, as you just said, with the media. You get a little sarcastic and you don't actually answer the question.
What do you think, Robbo? Is he deflecting?
Absolutely. Managers never start being sarcastic and never going at the press and saying stupid things when their team's doing well. They don't need to. The team's showing exactly how good he is when they're on the pitch and they're winning games and playing really well. But he's lost that little bit with his team. He knows they haven't got the authority. That's the word I would use. They haven't got that authority on the pitch anymore. They should have absolutely murdered Spurs at the weekend, gone 2-0 up, and then they couldn't keep that discipline. They couldn't keep the control. They couldn't keep their authority in the second half. And that's what he can't seem to change. and that's why he's getting stroppy. That's why he's deflecting to other things. Because at the moment, as the guys have said, Manchester City, you're not quite sure what sort of performance you're going to get from them at the moment, whether it be in the Champions League or the Premier League.
Arsenal finishing this game 1-0. They advanced 4-2 on aggregate, bringing that 3-2 lead from the first leg. Stuart Robson was watching for us today. It's Arsenal booking their spot in the final. What are your takeaways from this game, Stuart?
Well, you just summed it up with the highlights package there. There wasn't too many highlights. It was a strange approach by both teams. I mean, Arsenal, I thought, would come out all guns blazing, but they didn't. They just kept the ball at the back and kept it in midfield. There was no forward runners. Chelsea came out thinking, well, we're going to keep it tight and we're going to play 5 at the back. We might press every so often and stop Arsenal scoring. So it was a stalemate in the first half. There was hardly any shots on goal. It was all played at a very slow tempo. It was all about possession football. There was not enough forward runs from either side, not enough forward passes. So it really drifted. And if anything, Chelsea had the better chances in the second half without having a one-on-one with the goalkeeper. They had a couple of moments when the midfield player, Fernandes, got on the ball. He had 3 shots from sort of just outside the box, which could have flashed into the top corner if he'd hit them well. But overall, it was a fairly tame game. Chelsea, I've seen them under Rosinia, and there's a lot of talk about what a great job he's done. And he's done an okay job. But there's been times when they've been an absolute shambles in the first half of games. They were against West Ham, they were against Napoli, and then he's had to make changes and they've played better. Today, they defended quite well. They stopped Arsenal really playing without Arsenal really posing too many threats. But they didn't have enough in the front areas, and they didn't show enough guile, they didn't show enough determination to go and get at Arsenal and get the win they needed. And he did some strange things. Delap played out on the right wing, a centre forward. We thought he'd play up front with João Pedro. He played out on the right wing. I have to say, it wasn't an enjoyable game to watch, and Kai Havertz just scored when they were in the very last minute of the game. So not a great game, I wouldn't say.
What did you think of it, Stevie?
Well, it's a semi-final, and at the end of the day, semi-finals are not about playing silky soccer, it's about getting a result. And at the end of the day, again, you have to say that Chelsea were the team that had to get the result because Arsenal had gotten themselves ahead from the first leg. So the onus really is in Chelsea. And Arsenal, we've complained all season that they found it hard to break teams down, and they couldn't break Chelsea down in the first half. But again, at the end of the day, if you're ahead in the tie and you're the one pushing the game and you just can't break through, you're going through, you're winning at the end of when the final whistle goes. So to me, this, particularly the second half, was on Chelsea. You know, if you want to keep it tight like they did, and then you want to bring on your Palmers and Estavals, but you got to bring them on at half time. You got to do part of the job in the first half, and in the second half, you've got to give yourself time to win the game. You know, there's no point in bringing the cavalry on with 15, 20 minutes to go, and then run out of time. That doesn't make any sense. So, listen, if I'm Arsenal, I couldn't care less that I didn't play any great type of football to watch. But we won the game, and if you're Chelsea, it's a semi-final. You've missed out on playing at Wembley in a cup final, possibly because the manager was a little too scared to begin with and didn't give you enough time to actually win the game in the second half.
It was a weird game. It was a weird feeling to the game. In that, yes, Chelsea has a responsibility because they need to win the game, and yet they're, at least in the first half, they seem to be far more conservative and they were just concerned to, hey, let's get it to halftime at zeros and see if we can do something in the second half. Whereas Arsenal, I think they felt, and we feel, they're the better team, and it's almost as if because they're the better team, they have to go and create something, but they don't feel all that comfortable doing it. And so it became a whole lot of nothing in this match. So when Robert calls it tame, I'll call it boring. Boring is what it was. It was just in the middle third. It's missed passes, set pieces. It's the only thing that gives you drama when you're Arsenal. There was certainly a shout for a penalty kick on João Pedro at the back post where Saliba is just grabbing him to the ground. That wasn't given. That may have changed the dynamics of the game or the personality of the game. Middle third nonsense, fouls, stoppages, complaining to the referee, booing from the crowd. Nothing of quality to actually see on the field, and not that they're here to entertain us, because Arsenal, all they want to do is get through to the next round. But Chelsea never really pushed. Yeah, there were a couple of things here and there, but never really actually pushed Arsenal to a situation of being under pressure, kind of hanging on, grinding. That wasn't the case. Chelsea wasn't strong enough offensively, and Arsenal did just enough.
And then obviously it was Kai Havertz scoring the winning goal in this game, Robbo, and that starts a whole new conversation, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly does, because Gyökeres once again, he did okay. But there was in the commentary, the commentator said he's touched the ball once in the first 30 minutes. That says that he either wasn't making enough runs, they weren't looking forward enough, which was probably both right. But you want him to be more involved in the game. He's got to run the channels. He's got to be stronger when the ball was played up to him. When the ball went the other way, João Pedro did more than Gyökeres did. Gyökeres, it doesn't seem to be able to hold the ball up at the moment and bring others into play, whereas João Pedro did it quite often for Chelsea. So there's still some work that he needs to do. Jesus didn't come on, and Kai Havertz came on. He was only on for 10 minutes or so and obviously scored the goal. But last year we were saying he wasn't a good enough centre forward. Are we still saying that Gyökeres hasn't replaced him well enough, and maybe Kai Havertz plays at centre forward again? That's the reason we said that Arsenal didn't win the title last year, because they didn't have a proper centre forward. They've got a centre forward at the moment, and they've bought for a lot of money that's not quite at the races.
He's been given 6 months. Basically, Mikel Arteta has said, right, you've got 6 months to separate yourself from Jesus, Havertz, Marino, anybody else who thinks they can play through the middle. I'm going to give you this. He's had probably, 20-odd games?
Well, it felt like you were one of the people defending him more on this panel
I was
as well.
trying to defend him to begin with, because the way Arsenal played doesn't exactly help a centre-forward with balls in the box early. But I still thought that he was good enough to score goals. And I thought he was good enough to actually try and, get some goals for himself out of nothing. But the answer right now is he hasn't been able to do any of those things. And so he hasn't been able to separate himself from the other three that I told you about. And so if you're Mikel Arteta, you're actually, before every game now, you're going, right, who do we start as centre forward? Is Jesus fit enough now? Is Havertz fit enough now? Do we play Marino? Or do we play Gyökeres? I mean, that's what's going through Arteta's head right now.
That heat map that we show there from Gyökeres is embarrassing. 70 minutes, 69 minutes that he played. 10 touches, only 1 completed pass. And while I understand that Arsenal are not a team that play through the center forward, the heat map itself tells you that the movement isn't exactly all that sharp or abundant for that matter. That's embarrassing, Stevie. 10 touches in 69 minutes.
I mean, the centre forward, he's only got 1 touch in the penalty box.
Well, yes, and he's nowhere near around the penalty box. And look, I think sometimes as a centre forward, you get frustrated by the lack of service, and then that frustration amounts to you stop making the runs. And that's the worst thing that you can do as a player, because you cannot lose sight of the fact that you can be useful to the team in other ways. And while I advocate for center forwards to be patient, to allow the game to come to them, to not force the touches. If you have touched the ball once in the first 30 minutes, I'm going to the center back and give me a ball, give me a touch. I want to feel what this is like. Let me, can I please touch the ball one time? Let me participate in the game, because I need to feel alive here. You guys are leaving me for dead. And that, I think, speaks to the inactivity of Gyökeres, and you see it in the heat map. There isn't a whole lot of movement. It's one thing to not to be touching the ball, but the movement, and you put those things together, and that's an embarrassing heat map to look at.
He actually probably has gone, or should be going to the back of the queue, because we're talking about Arsenal not being a team that puts the ball in the box for a centre forward. So that means that if that's not happening, as a player, you have to contribute somewhere else. And clearly, he's not contributing anywhere else. Whereas you look at Jesus or Havertz, in particular those two, outside the box they absolutely contribute. So I said he hasn't separated himself. He actually might be at the bottom of the pile right now.
Robbo, Arsenal play Sunderland on Saturday. Who starts at centre forward?
I think he'd probably go with Jesus if he's fit, because he's a confidence player, Jesus, and he's scored several goals recently. He looks quite sharp. He looks hungry. He looks as though he's got his confidence back. We go back to Gyökeres. Is there anything that Gyökeres, I mean, he's okay at a lot of things, but is he better in the air than Marino? Is he better in the air than Havertz? Is he quicker than Jesus? Is he better at holding the play up than Havertz or Marino or Jesus? I don't think he is. So there's not one aspect of his game that you say, we've got to hang a hat on that and we're going to put him in the side. So I think if he's fit, Jesus, a confidence player, has been in goal-scoring form recently, I think he starts the game.
Okay, so we do know that it will be Newcastle or Man City that they face in the final of the Carabao Cup. That's how things are looking so far in that tight City with the 2-0 lead. And on Wednesday, they will try to see it out.
The Premier League.
I'll tell you who'd love definitely one of those players that Pep's just got his hand on is Liverpool. We know the defensive crisis they're having right now with the injuries. Just a reminder of that, including those at the back. Frimpong, Bradley, Gomez and of course Leone, but they have been active in the window. It's just that the player that they're bringing in is coming in the summer. It's Jeremy Jacquet, the 20-year-old, a French under-21 international. He's going to remain at his club in France for the rest of the season. So the idea is there, but the timing would have been a bit better now, wouldn't it, Stevie?
Yes, unfortunately, it's not an ideal world, and this time of the year, it's really tough to get proper players because, you know, for a player to go and play for a Liverpool or a City or a Real Madrid, they have to be of a certain level. And in the middle of a season, regardless of what country you're in, teams don't want to let the players go at this time because they know they can't get a replacement. And so the best thing for Liverpool right now is to make sure that they get this guy for real and for good at the end of the season. Yeah, I mean, I don't know a huge amount about him. I looked at some highlights, but obviously you can't find highlights of players like him doing things wrong. Every highlight is spectacular and last-ditch challenges and
maybe that's all he's done.
Well, let's hope that is true. But I'm a little surprised, but I understand it. As I said, if you're going to bring somebody in this time of the year, it has to be somebody who can actually play at that level. And that's not easy to do. So the second best is you get him for the end of the season. And you're lucky that you've got somebody like Gravenberg who could do a job if Konate or Van Dijk get injured. But it's not a great place to be. But it's a tough window to get proper players in.
How worried should Liverpool be for what remains of this season, Robbo?
How worried should they be? I mean, they're getting a bit more out of Florian Wirtz. He's now starting to show what he can do. He was man of the match at the weekend. Mo Salah hopefully comes back and shows that he's got that little bit of pace again. There was one run he made in the game at the weekend when he got away from his marker and then hit a bad shot with his right foot. But maybe he's going to find his form again. The midfield, I mean, Szoboszlai has to play at right back, which I don't think is ideal. They've got one or two problems at centre back. If they all get together and if they can play at their very best, they're still a good team, a very good team. But they're inconsistent, just like we were talking about Man City. You don't know whether Liverpool are going to be at their best week in, week out, and there's still some games that you fancy them to lose. So they are where they are at the moment. I think that's probably where they'll finish. What's
the best you can hope for what remains in the season?
Just get into Champions League. Get in the Champions League. If you can't win the title, then you have to be in the Champions League. And they're capable of it, but as Robbo said, sometimes you watch them and you're not quite sure what you're going to get.
Okay. Make sure to join these guys. They'll be answering your questions on the latest edition of Extra Time. You can check it out over on our YouTube channel.
Mikel Arteta's work at Arsenal is being viewed in an even brighter light after the recent coaching shakeups elsewhere. With Chelsea parting ways with Enzo Maresca and Manchester United moving on from Ruben Amorim, the contrast is hard to miss. Arsenal has kept moving forward under Arteta, giving him time through difficult stretches, and now seeing the payoff as the club pushes again in the Premier League title race. It also raises a bigger question about strategy. While Chelsea and United are changing direction again, Arteta has been in place for more than 6 years, outlasting a long list of managers across those two clubs in that span. That stability has become part of the story, and it was a major talking point on the Seeing Red podcast with Tom Canton and John Cross. Beyond reacting to Amorim's dismissal and breaking down wins over Aston Villa and Bournemouth, plus Manchester City's loss to Chelsea, the conversation kept returning to one core idea: structure. Not just who is the coach, but how much power that coach has, and whether the club is built to support a long-term project. Cross pointed to Arsenal as a rare example of patience turning into real strength. He argued that Arsenal's willingness to back Arteta through the messy early phases helped create the stable position they're in now, and that this kind of time and support investment is what can turn a club into something truly solid. Canton's response was sharp and honest. Arteta's arc, he said, has almost become a problem for other clubs, because it tempts them to keep coaches they probably shouldn't. But at the same time, it's still the best example of what can happen when you hire the right person and actually give them time. And that time wasn't smooth. The discussion highlighted how Arsenal could easily have pulled the plug early. 2 8th-place finishes, then 5th, missing out on the Champions League, and a Europa League semi-final exit to Unai Emery's Villarreal. Any of those moments could have pushed a club into panic mode. Instead, the argument is that Arsenal recognized the bigger reality. Arteta didn't have the resources to compete at the required level right away. The squad needed a rebuild. The roster needed to be refreshed. That's where the comparison to Chelsea and United becomes even more pointed. The podcast suggested that recruitment and decision-making structure are often what determine whether a coach survives. If signings don't land, results suffer. And if a coach doesn't have enough influence, or the club isn't aligned behind a clear plan, it becomes much easier for things to collapse. In other words, giving time only works if the coach is empowered to shape the team in a way that matches the vision. Cross also emphasized that Arteta's situation stood out because he pushed to be a true manager, not just a head coach. The idea is simple. Top coaches want a real say in the build, and they want the club to match what they were promised when they took the job. The discussion even pointed to how Arteta survived a low moment, like the home loss to Burnley, because the club stayed behind him. And in that period, with fan pressure affected by the COVID-era environment, Arsenal were able to hold their nerve instead of reacting emotionally. Meanwhile, the big unknowns now shift back to Chelsea and Manchester United. Who replaces Amorim? And how will the next chapter look at Chelsea? The answers may come sooner than people expect. But for Arsenal, the reality stays the same. They're stable, they're moving forward, and they're still in the title chase, while others are starting over again. And that contrast can shape how people judge every manager in the league. Because when two massive clubs hit the reset button again, it forces the same question Cross raised on the show. Is the quick switch actually fixing the problem, or just delaying the real work? The bigger takeaway from the discussion is that time isn't a magic solution by itself. It only becomes valuable when the club's structure supports the plan, and when the coach has the influence to push the squad in the direction he believes it needs to go. That's why the distinction between head coach and manager kept coming up. The podcast point is that if a coach is expected to own the results, he usually wants a meaningful say in the decisions that shape those results. And if he doesn't get that, patience alone won't save him. That's also where Arteta's early struggles get reframed. Those finishes and setbacks could have become a reason to panic. Instead, they became evidence of why alignment matters, because Arsenal chose to treat them as part of a build, not a final verdict. And once the squad was reshaped the way the club believed it needed to be, the results started to reflect that long-term approach. So the repercussions aren't just about Arsenal looking stable, it's about how stability changes your margin for error. When you don't reset every year, you're not constantly starting from zero. You're building on decisions, learning from setbacks, and keeping a clearer identity. For Chelsea and Manchester United, the immediate consequence is obvious. They're changing direction again, which means the next appointment carries even more weight. Because every new coach isn't just judged on results. He's judged on whether the club is finally giving him the structure and authority that the role demands. That's why the question at the end matters so much. Who will replace Amorim? And how will Liam Rosenior do at Chelsea? Because those answers will test the exact theme the show kept returning to. Time, support, structure, and control. And for Arsenal, it's a different kind of pressure. Stability doesn't guarantee trophies, but it does keep you in the fight longer. And right now, while others restart, Arsenal get to stay focused on what they're already doing, chasing the Premier League title.